Fuck, damn. You dissed me, put all that pressure on me. What is up, Elevation Nation? We have a special treat for you. We have on the CEO of Snapback Sports, a sports media company. Jack Settleman joins the Elevation Nation podcast. And just a little bit of background for you all. Him and his team have amounted over hundreds of millions of views on Snapchat and over 1 million plus followers on Snapchat, I believe. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. And per your Wikipedia page, you have the largest sports-based Snapchat account in the world. Is that true?
That is true.
That is wild. But you're not just on Snapchat. You're all over Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, anywhere where people get their social media. And you're capturing the stories of sports all around the world and obviously giving your take on it and sharing it with your audience. And obviously today we want to get and talk about sports and that experience. But even more so, we wanted to get into the mind of Jack Settleman and hear about how you elevate your life. So Jack, welcome to the Elevation Nation podcast. We are pumped to have you.
I appreciate that. And you nailed the intro, so thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
I was going to say, Parker, that might have been your best one yet. Well done.
You know, it's a lot better when you, like, write it down and then you can, like, read it, kind of go off the cuff. Like, sometimes when you're just going off the cuff, it's like, oh, man, what am I even saying?
Yeah, what episode is this?
70.
This is going to be 80-something, I think, once we release it.
Yeah, this will be 80 plus when we release it.
All right. Well, that's very, very impressive. So, congrats.
Thank you.
But, Jack, I will say, like, this is pretty slow time in sports. I mean, Olympics just ended, right? You have, I guess, training camp in football, which is like whatever. It gets boring after one day. Like, what's keeping you busy? Is it Summer League?
It's a flight to Friday to go to Las Vegas for Summer League. Yeah, sports do not stop. They only pick up. So these are my last few weeks where it is supposed to be a little more tame. I got a schedule for the fall, which is, I mean, one of the companies we're working with literally is like, if you want to, you can go travel to a game every single weekend. And I'm like, I know this is cool. I'm young. I can travel. I can do these. At some point, I just want to like sleep in my own bed in New York City. But yeah, it is. Sports don't stop, even when it feels slow. Even during COVID, when sports did stop, there was still content. There's still conversations, and I think that's the fun part about sports is there's always something going on.
There really is. And, Jack, you kind of just reminded me of Parker and I are both consultants full-time, and they joke that consultants sleep in hotel rooms more than their own beds. And it sounds like you're kind of in the same boat with us, brother. So at least you're getting those airline miles and hotel points, and hopefully you can rack those up. But I want to, Parker did a great job on his intro, so I don't want to take away from that. But, Jack, I kind of want to hear your elevator pitch, so to speak, of, like, who are you in your own words?
That's a great question. I would say a year ago, I would be, just finally finding my legs as a content creator. My first kind of exhibit as talent, Bleacher Report and Whistle and these other media companies actually paying me money to be myself, which is a funny thought, Yeah.
Love that.
But I never thought of myself as a creator or an influencer of sorts. So that was like for the past year. But over the last 6 months, who am I as a person? I got really heavy into the NFT space, and the NFT space just opens your mind to a million different things, and where's digital going, all these things. And I had to look at myself holistically of what I like to do. So I like sports, but I like investing. I like networking, meaningful relationships. I like working out, travel, doing all these different types of things. And I think we bucket ourselves as like, you're a consultant, I'm in sports, right? But it's like who you are as a person way exceeds who you are from 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, whatever everyone's working these days.
That's awesome. I feel like I'm just like so pumped for this conversation because we got some introspective questions coming your way. So we want to break down how we're going to go about this conversation for you. So on the Elevation Nation podcast, we talk about this concept of mental fortitude. And it's the key piece that Sam and I believe young adults need to get out of the comfort zone and truly elevate yourself. So we're going to break down this conversation into 3 parts. Self-awareness, who are you? your vision, what do you want, and accountability. How are you going about getting the things that you do want? So we'll start with self-awareness, and this may be a little tricky. We're working with this question, but what 1 or 2 words best describe you?
Oof, that is a tough one. I would say lover. And I think I'd say that because that's kind of the end goal, is like to just love people. I've written about that and thought about that a lot, which is like, we being males in our age range have a really tough time telling people we love them. And that's not just your girlfriend or your parents or your siblings, but it's your like best friends. It's people you're working with. And that word does hold a lot of weight, but it also means like showing compassion and showing real appreciation. And then it breaks all the way down. I'm on social media 24 hours a day. It's like, I can say I love you to some people I've never met in person, because I really truthfully, I want, which is also a crazy thing about the past 18 months, is like your internet friends, when you meet them in real life for the first time. I've had a couple of those instances, but you can like acknowledge how much they mean to you, and it's not like a soft side. It's just genuine, like rooting for other people. So I guess that would be what I would say.
And Elevation Nation, before we started, this conversation with Jack, I said, hey man, we get pretty deep and introspective. Are you okay with that? I'm glad to see we're hitting the ground running here already with the word lover, because I totally agree with that statement of like, young adults, we are trained, especially when we grow up fans of sports, right? The only time you see our favorite athletes cry is when they win the championship, right? They could have their leg snapped in half. They will not cry, right? It's when they reach the pinnacle.
It depends.
Yeah, right.
Depends.
It depends on the player. But for the most part, right, you got these really big, tough guys. We grow up in this world where we see them as idols and people that we really want to be like. And so we push down and we hide those emotions that we have for people. So I love, pun intended, that you said the word lover, because I think that's where hopefully we all can get. And I think having mental fortitude and the self-awareness to realize that that's what you bring to the table is truly impactful, right? You could have said a ton of other words that were probably more aligned to what you do day in and day out of being an influencer and a content creator, but you picked lover. So I think that's fantastic. I want to follow up, Jack, with, is that based on a life event that maybe happened when you were growing up in the Baltimore area, right? Like, did that come from somewhere? Something that your family, an event, family, parents?
Yeah, so I can point back to, so not many people know, and you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at me now, but when I was in 8th grade at McDonough, which Parker knows well, I was
kick our ass in soccer every year.
It was like a warm-up game for us.
Like literally, it was like your what do they call it?
Yeah, when they schedule like the
D8
team to beat up on.
Yeah, basically, they'd come and like literally kick our ass 6-0. And then they go on win the national championship.
But when I was in 8th grade, I was diagnosed with alopecia areata. So if you know Ryan Shazier, Charlie Villanueva, Josh Dobbs, they have it as well. And you lose hair. And so when I was in 8th grade, it started to fall out. 9th grade continues. I start losing eyebrows. And it was, it's never easy to lose hair at any age. And I think a lot of our age is actually going to go through this shortly. But when you're in high school, like a freshman in high school, you also lose your identity. And that's when you're finding your identity. So it was a really complex situation, obviously that being the time period for it all. And then what I realized going through high school and then eventually in college was like everyone is going through something. Mine was more so on the outside because it had to do with physical hair loss, but everyone, family shit, divorce, a death, whatever it is. It could be smaller stuff, it could be bigger stuff, but literally, if you can find someone who's not going through something, then they're the most blessed person on the earth, and unfortunately, their time is probably coming, right? So I think once I really recognized that, it was like, give people the benefit of the doubt, show them love before you show them hate, and that's kind of been a driving force for the past 10 years of my life.
I can't imagine like going through that experience at all? Like in high school, obviously, like, you know, it's something that's affecting you on the outside, so everyone sees that you're going through this, and I just can't imagine going through that. And then you get to college, and you're in an opportunity to kind of rebuild your identity, right? So what was like that? What was that transition from high school to college for you?
Yeah, so my friends, I promise I like them and they're nice. But when I got to college my freshman year, I had regrown like a solid amount of my hair. Like you couldn't really tell. It just looked like I had a terrible haircut. So my best friends, I kid you not, the name of their Wi-Fi freshman year was bowl cut because they saw me before they even knew me in the lobby, lobby, and just were like, yeah,
in college?
and they ended up becoming my best friends. So it did kind of start to grow back, and then by senior year of college, like you would, you know, it's kind of where it's at today. You would have no clue. So I did rebuild kind of a new identity, and then a lot of the success of my outward-facing life, which is content creation now, is like 99.8% of people have no clue about alopecia because they've never seen it. It happened after I had the hair. So it is interesting. It's why I like to bring it back and make people understand like kind of why I am the way I am. And one of the biggest things at Snapback is giving back to the community because they're not only always going through something, but you know, we are very privileged to have gone to sports events and gone to good colleges. But a lot of my audience, I didn't realize it till I started listening to them. They've never been to a game before. They've never had, you know. And so once I realized that, it's like, yeah, there's so much stuff that can be, they can share this experience with me through social media, which has been like a fun way to kind of do that.
I want to ask you, Jack, based on that, and, you know, you obviously are, that was a very articulate answer. So you've obviously thought about who you are as a person, and I think, you know, Parker and I stress how important it is to be self-aware and understand who you are. But unfortunately, that's not something they taught us in high school. It's not something that we paid for at our different respective universities, right? And all of a sudden, we enter the real world, and you're thrown into a job. You probably don't have time to even take a step back, come up for air, breathe, and be like, who the hell am I? And, you know, with you saying these are your few down weeks, you've been traveling nonstop, honestly, you've been climbing and grinding day in and day out. How have you found time for yourself to be like, all right, I've reached new goals, I need to take a step back. What does Jack Settleman stand for now? How has that changed, right? Because everyone's evolving and becoming a new person, right? Like, how do you find the time to do that?
Yeah, it's a I always talk about it like this. I'm running, you know, every hour I'm awake, I'm technically working. And that's the beauty of doing something, not like the cliche, do what you love, but actually doing like who you are. Like when I'm tweeting, it's technically work because it's building relationships and it's building my personal brand. And it's stuff I want to be known for. I want to be known for someone who is a Ravens fan, a Knicks fan, and then also someone who buys NFTs and loves sports cards too. So it's silly because now it's come to, you know, I'm just firing off tweets, but that is considered work. So I'm running on like 80% where I don't really go to that place where, you know, you have to take a test in school. You have to be there mentally 100%. You're an athlete. You're playing in a game. You have to be there 100%. And I rarely get to go to that place, but I've been challenging myself to find those times where I can go to 100% and unlock that creativity and that just the feeling of getting over hurdles and accomplishing those tough tasks.
It's that reflective state, to your point, of like, if you can really take a step back, like I was telling Parker this the other day, I'll embarrassingly admit this here on Elevation Nation and to you, Jack.
Oh, God.
Like, we had a week off of work. And so I was home. All my roommates were working. I had nothing to do. I was like, damn, I'm going to do some self-reflection. I like, lit a candle. I put on classical music.
Wow.
Man. Like, I started just brainstorming, like, everything on my mind. Yeah, I'm an old man.
Alert. Like, literally.
Yeah. But, like, that was super beneficial. Afterwards, I was done. I was like, dang, I had all that in my head. I had no idea that's what I was thinking or where I was going. I needed to, like, throw it up and get it out.
So uncomfortable, too, which is
so
great.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I wish that was, like, a standard, almost like getting your teeth cleaned every year, or like getting a physical, right? Like, why is that not a thing that everyone just does?
There's
right?
Yeah,
Should
there's
be.
so much room. One of my goals, it's not active, like I'm not actively trying to accomplish it, but one thing that literally went through my head today, and I'm in a great headspace mentally, but I'm like, I think I want to start up therapy again just for that reason. And one of my long-term goals is I think everyone should be going to therapy, and we need to make it more accessible. We need to kill the stigma
Totally.
on it, because when I went through it, when I had alopecia, when I needed it, it was the healthy, like in the moment it sucked. I dreaded it. I thought I was lame for doing it. I should just sack up and go through it. And then retrospectively, I'm like, damn, I need to be doing this. This is the healthiest. And it's the same thing. It's why yoga works, journaling, self-reflection, all that stuff. It's just about killing the stigma with it and encouraging people to have open conversations.
The stigma is like you do those things when something's wrong with you, but when in reality, if you just do them as part of your life, you're going to become better as a result of that, and you're taking care of yourself, and that's the biggest thing. You don't need to be broken to take care of yourself. I do want to ask you, Jack, one more question in our self-awareness bucket. You know, you talk about that you're like almost always on. You feel as if you're always on, but you're being yourself. Could you talk through like some of the pressure with that? Do you feel that pressure every day that you have to write that extra tweet or put out that amazing podcast?
That's a great question, I think, for a content creator in general, is like, I could always be doing more, right? And with some jobs, like, you can't be doing more. If you do work at Chipotle and you work the line, like, when you go home, you can't do more. Like with me and in the digital age, you can always do more. And so that was a big thing when I left my job in January and decided to go full time. The beauty for a while was it was just kind of me. So the pressure was like, if I don't, climb these heights, I'm the only one who fails. Now, supporting an intern, supporting a manager, actually supporting other people. And we haven't hired full-time fully. Like, Alex, my manager, will be starting in a month, like, his own thing, and I'll be a big part of it. But I haven't been paying someone a salary and knowing, like, because then, yes, that pressure absolutely rises. And it's always never going to be about me. It's going to be about supporting those people. So dealing with those pressures has been easier. I'm conscious of what comes with all these different things, and we've been fortunate. But, yeah, the thought of having to support people and families and, like, true CEOs, right?
That's like a that you would think you would have in 25 years. But now you're sitting here, you're what, 25, 26 years old, whatever, thinking that. But it's real. It's happening right now, and that's crazy. And I'm sure that just brings pressure on you naturally.
Yeah. And my personal motto is like, be nice, be happy. And it's all fun and games when you can pay your own rent and go watch games on the weekend. But when you're in charge of making sure someone else can pay rent and that their business is that is when the pressure starts to come in. I'll admit I'm not fully there yet in terms of like feeling all of it, because the pressure is still limited. But it could come, and we have those conversations daily about, do we fully incorporate, like right now we're under a sole proprietorship LLC, and I'm paying out essentially contractors and that type of stuff. But do we build a company, raise money, hire people, do all that good stuff?
The pressure that entrepreneurs face, and you are in a whole different realm than Parker and myself, so I'm not trying to compare us here, but just the mindset that entrepreneurs have, right? I think we have that in common, and it's that I could always be doing something more, right? Like, Parker and I have full-time jobs, consulting. We love it. It's great. Afterwards, we grind every single day on Elevation Nation, right? And it's, what time do we go to bed? I could do more. You can always do more. And that is, I think, one of the worst, like, it's not a vice, but just like the worst curse you can have with your own mind. Because I am,
or it's a good one, Sam.
It's either a good one.
The way you look at it, bro.
Exactly. But it drives me, at least me, it drives me crazy. Because I was one of those kids, I don't know if you were like this, Jack, when you are studying for an exam in college, I would always do more because I didn't know when to stop. It was like, well, there's more questions to review, and I could review those questions again another time and keep reviewing them. And it was like I was begging the test to come already so I could take it, so I could just be done studying, because I didn't know how to like cross it off my list and say I've studied enough. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurship, and then amplify that with pressure from other people. It's tough, man, but I think you are balancing it very well. It's a grind, though.
Yeah, no doubt.
So moving on to our next section here, Jack, which is vision, right? You've been mentioning, the past 18 months, a lot of things have changed. I want to take a step back to college at UT, right? Jack is doing his thing. I know you had some businesses in college, which is sweet, but what was your vision upon graduation, right? Were you going to fall into the consulting footsteps like me and Parker? Were you going to go be an investment banker on Wall Street? What was the vision that you honestly had in your mind?
So since day one, predating college, high school, I have always wanted to work in sports. And you kind of touched on it earlier. And the reason why I wanted to work in sports is the passion and emotion in sports. I always joke, like, you think when Apple hits their earnings, they're in the conference room hugging, crying, slapping each other on the ass. Like, no. Like, they wait for the bonus to hit their bank account. Like, sports is the only place where grown men cry over, like, round balls, right? And it's, like, hilarious, but it means so much then to the fans, then to everyone else that's attached to it. So I knew I wanted to be in sports because I love the energy with it. Then I grew up in a family business. It's in beer distribution, and we sold beer to the Ravens and the Orioles. And so growing up, like normal households, the dads are the ones who want to go to the game. My mom and aunt, who are in the business, they care more about a Ravens win than anyone else, because the more times the Ravens win, the more beer we sell. If we go to the playoffs, more home playoff games means an extra week of beer. The year we were in high school, Parker, and we won the Super Bowl, right? That's their greatest year, right? So, it's like, I've always learned about the business side of sports. So combining those two, I always kind of knew what I wanted to do. And then, I was stringing mini lacrosse sticks and trying to sell them in middle school. And, like, I've always had that entrepreneurial. Like, I wrote an oratory in high school about how I think high school is stupid and we should be studying our majors in high school. Like,
That's
because
awesome.
Why am I learning about this Pythagorean theorem? And I have learned it's to teach you how to learn. And there's reasons, but I kind of knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to get a head start on that. So when I came out of college, I was listening to a lot of people, and one of the themes that kept recurring was you can be entrepreneurial within companies, and you can learn, you can have backing, you can have resources. And that was huge for me, because I thought I needed to come out of school and start my own business right away. And I'm entrepreneurial and I want to be in sports. But you can go to a company, have an entrepreneurial spirit, and have no risk because it's someone else's money you're playing with and you're getting paid for it. And so I really took that opportunity. I worked at Action Network, then I worked at Whistle Sports and learned a ton. And then I got to the point where I was super comfortable and confident that I could do it all on my own. So the vision was always there, but the key was listening to people along the way and learning from them.
It's just like so cool the way you broke that down for Elevation Nation and us. Just like the way you have taken a step back in your life. I'm sure you're in college sitting around like, oh, what should I do? And then it's always the light goes off. Wait, I'm going into sports, and that's happening. Like, that's my vision. That is everything I'm going for. And now you're sitting here, you're running a sports media company after, working for someone else, and now you're working for yourself. So I think it's just amazing. And like, as a young adult, sometimes it's so hard to see that you can do the actual thing that you want to do, because we live in this world where other people keep telling you should do this. Oh wait, you should go there. Or you pick up your phone like, dang, I want to be like that person or this person, but wait, I don't know how to get there. And you're lost. And that's such a big challenge in today's day and age.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I remember the days where I was calling people at Bleacher Report who I had gotten in contact from a friend of a friend, and now they're paying me to work with them. And it's like, it's crazy to think how full circle. And my grandmother still has no clue what I do and wants me to get a real job. And that's the best part. It is, it has nothing to do with like her not hoping for my success, but she wants me to get a real job still. And so I think that's just the new way. And then the final thing of why I think sports makes so much sense, I kind of knew I was talented, and if I wasn't talented, I was going to work really hard. And in sports, if you're the best player, if you have the most talent, you start. You're Luka Doncic. It doesn't matter if you're 21 or 34. You're in the starting lineup. In the business world, all that matters is age and experience, and I thought that was such a flawed thing. So I went to an industry where they already knew that if you're talented, you can succeed at an early age. Now, don't get it twisted. Like, if you go work for the Cincinnati Reds, like, there's still a hierarchy based off experience, and there's value to experience. But if you're talented, I felt like this was a field that I could at least try and rise the ranks a little quicker than traditionally.
Dude, that grandma comment. I'm glad I was on mute because that resonated with me so hard. I think every time my grandma asks what I'm up to, I try to explain it in a different way and fail. And she's like, what? So I'm with you on that,
dude,
man.
I think my parents think I work for like the CIA. I'm like, no, like not at all. I can't, like, I don't tell you what I do because you just literally won't understand.
What I mean, think about when I started buying NFTs, right? And
my God.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're like, what? You're like dropping all this money, and they're like, why are you doing this?
They're like, can you touch it? I'm like, no, that's the best part. They're like, you're a lost cause. Goodbye.
Oh my gosh.
Right, Jack, get in your room.
Yeah,
That's hilarious. No, I love that, man. I think having your vision, so strong at a young age is incredible. And it's also very lucky, I will say, right? I think a lot of people, and myself included, right? I had my basketball shtick for a while, and then I looked at my parents and saw I was never going to be above 6 foot and said, all right, guess I'm not going to be in the world of basketball, right? And I kept changing what I wanted to do and changing trajectories, and now we have a new vision with what we want from Elevation Nation, and that's just to help young people get through these hard times that they're struggling with. But knowing that and being so strong-willed in that, I think, is really impressive. And I just want to send a quick note, a shout-out to Elevation Nation, is like, you hear Jack's story and how super passionate he is about sports, and you might be sitting there, if you're anything like I was when I first graduated, and you were like, damn, like, well, I have this job, I don't love it, and I don't really know what I want to do. Everyone is on a different timeline. Like, I just really want to stress that real quick, because I remember when I was, to Parker's point, like looking on Instagram and comparing myself probably to you, Jack, before I even knew you, right? Of all these kids my age doing cool stuff, living it up, going to sports games. And I was like, man, I'm doing PowerPoint decks right now, right? Like, I don't love this. So everyone is on a different timeline. You will figure it out. I think it all is rooted in self-awareness and understanding who you want, and then that can help propel your vision whenever you get there.
Absolutely. I'm in the social media game. So I was looked at as this wonder kid who built this big page, and I'm 22 or 23. And now it's like there's 16-year-olds on TikTok who have made what I'm pretty sure there's a 6-year-old YouTuber who makes like $50 million in revenue. What's his name? Do you know?
Presence.
Yeah. So there will always be someone richer, someone better looking. Like, there will always be someone better. And so once you realize it's your life, like, worry about, what you can do and the people around you, it's very freeing. Because you can't chase. Like, you're not beating Jeff Bezos. You're just not. You're not going to have as much money as him.
I mean, what is he? I think he's actually the second richest man in the world now. Someone passed him. I think, like, the founder of like Louis Vuitton or something.
Okay.
Or
good for it.
Something. I don't know. Yeah, like recently.
You're not going to be him either, Parker, so don't worry.
Yeah, listen, Jeff Bezos has launched himself to space. Like, think about that for a second. But let's forget work for a second. On Elevation Nation, we love to talk about work because it obviously poses a lot of challenges for young adults. But there's a lot of time you spend outside of work. So how are you able to prioritize the other buckets of your life and make sure that you're making time for those?
That's so important nowadays. And, my girlfriend who wants to plan a trip, and I give her 2 weekends from now until Jan 1, and she's like, what do you mean those are the only options? That's all I have, right? And so I have to prioritize that, and that's why after this ends, I got to go over to hers before I leave for Vegas on Friday. But it's so important, and there's all the cliches of, tell people you love them and, make sure. But it's just cliches tend to be like really good thought starters. They seem to be accurate 9 times out of 10. So, yeah, I do try and prioritize it. It is who I am, which is like I'd much rather be with people than by myself. So that naturally comes out. But I love exploring on my own. So, like, the thought of Sam, what Sam said earlier, like self-reflection. When we were abroad in Barcelona and we did a trip to Madrid, like, I went to the Madrid soccer game by myself. I walked around Madrid all by myself. And those are some of the best days. And now the crutch is your phone, because if you go eat at a cafe, you can just be on your phone. But if you encourage yourself to be uncomfortable, even if it's for 4 minutes, like I sat in the steam room today and I was like, what do I do with my hands? Like, there's nothing. Yeah.
Close your eyes.
Yeah.
Just close your eyes.
Definitely close your eyes in the steam room. But there's nothing like, we're so used to this information constantly. First thing that happens when you wake up, you check your phone, then you're this, then you're that. And, being uncomfortable is so important nowadays. But yeah, prioritize your people that you care about, but don't be afraid to make that circle a little bit smaller than, feeling the need to be best friends with the 8th or 12th person down the line.
I love that last line you just said, because my circle personally, since high school and college, has gotten smaller, but has expanded in different directions, if that makes sense. With the podcast, with having Elevation Nation, I've been able to meet so many interesting, cool, like-minded people from across the world who maybe I'm not best friends with them, but I know if I called them up and asked for a favor or asked if they wanted to get dinner, if I was in their town, we would grab dinner and we would talk about what we're trying to accomplish in life and where we're trying to go. And I think having that tight-knit circle of people who are your core ride-or-die crew and having that be small, but then making sure that you're focusing on all these other people that you want to help learn and grow with is extremely important. So I love that. And that brings us to our final section and a question I want to ask you here, Jack, around accountability, the last part of mental fortitude. Right? I just talked about all the other people in your life. So I'm curious, are there any mentors, coaches, or friends that are really helping you hold yourself accountable in those professional goals that you have, but also those personal buckets? I know it's your girlfriend telling you to take off more than 2 weeks, which I respect. I agree with that one.
Mentors, that's tough. I like to pick pieces from other people, and that was another tip I got that's been super helpful, is like, if you start a book, everyone feels like you have to finish it, but like, you can skim through, you can take the best parts, and obviously it's a skill to actually do that. But, you don't have to read from start to finish. You can essentially do whatever you want. It is your life. So I take a ton of stuff from my parents. Gary Vee, I was a huge believer in. Now, he kind of repeats himself a lot. But that's his game. So, just pulling from all these different worlds, then new people I've met over quarantine and over COVID, I've learned a ton from them. So I can't point to, like, someone that I necessarily am drawing directly from, because I'm not like anyone else, right? Like, I'm not just like someone else. So their advice and their experiences are never going to match mine. But I think playing everyone and being able to pick up little tidbits has been the best way for me to go about it.
I really like that, because you pick up a book, you learn something here or there, you listen to a podcast of someone you've never met before, you learn something here or there, or you just go outside and you see your girlfriend, she gives you this advice about something, And it's so incredible because everyone thinks a mentor has to be in person, but it doesn't have to be someone you know. You can pick up amazing advice and tips about life from the internet or from whomever. You just got to be cognizant and intentional in learning from them. So, Jack, I got one more question under accountability. You know, there's obviously a lot of ups with working in sports. You know, you get to travel around. You get to go to events. You get to obviously speak with your best friend on a podcast twice a week, release it to the world, and so many people hear it, and you get to interact with people on social media. But then you also have the times when things aren't going so well. Maybe you go through a challenge personally, or you go through a challenge in the business. What's that thing in your life that kind of grounds you when things get really, really high or things that get really, really low and just brings you back to
Great
Jack?
question. So when things get too high, I would just acknowledge, like, I'm very average in terms of what the world is. Like, we're not shit. Like, no one's shit in the grand scheme of things. Everyone's going to die. That's another thing I think about often. It's a horrible thought, but it's a really freeing thought, which is, 7 billion people. Think about the biggest person on the planet, and 2 billion people know him out of 7. And 100 years down the line, 1 million people might know the biggest, like Michael Jordan, like presidents, So you're really not going to do much in the grand scheme of things, and that's freeing. It sounds bad, but it is freeing.
No, at first it's a little depressing. You're like, shit, I'm going to die. Well, it's inevitable. I'm sorry, if you're listening to this, we're all going to die. So that's freeing in the sense that just go do you. Go make the life that you want to live, because you only get one go at it. Right?
I'm always conscious of main character syndrome, which I don't know if you guys have talked about that before, but everyone thinks, they're the star of a movie, and, because I had alopecia, it felt like there was a bright spotlight on me. But when someone walked by me, my thought was, oh, did they see my hair? Did they see my eyebrows? What are they thinking? They don't remember. 3 seconds later, they are done thinking about me, right? So that's why I maintain an important circle and care about the people that are in it, because the opinions of people on the outside who I don't know, like, they're literally not thinking about you ever, because when they walked by me, I'm thinking, what are they thinking? And they're thinking, what did I think about them? So everyone's always thinking about themselves. So when I get too low, I got to remember, obviously, how much of a envious position I'm in for a lot of people, and that's a pretty easy way to stay grounded. Is like, I got parents, family, brothers, cousins, like that. I got loved ones, and everything will work its way out.
So we did not plan this in advance, Jack, but you talking about death right there, I swear, I texted Parker a quote
you're right.
from the book
Damn.
I'm reading last night, and I said, bro, this quote is sweet. All right, so I'm going to read it for you real quick. And this is from David Chang, who's a very famous chef. I'm reading his autobiography. He says,
Elevation Nation, it's Sam's perspective right now.
Yeah, this is my perspective here. If the worst possible outcome is death, and we are all going to die anyway, then nothing else should scare me.
I mean, there it is.
I was like, damn.
It's as simple as it gets, honestly.
It really is, right? If that won't slap the shit out of you and make you realize that none of these little things that you care about in the day-to-day, that you get upset about, that you get irritated about matter, dude, we're all going to die. Move on.
So
live your life.
Let me flip it in a positive way.
Okay.
Not that this isn't. It's great thoughts and transparency, but one of the things I realized, because I was, I'm scared to quit my job and do my own thing, even though I was at a point we had booked deals for the year. Like, I knew I was fine, but there's obviously that fear, and a lot of people are like, well, what's the risk? I'm going to lose my job, all this stuff, and I realized, I'm like, human beings, like how we were made, the one thing we'll do, we'll figure out how to eat and get some water. Like, no matter what, like, we are built that way. And so even at the lowest moment, you will find a way. And you talk about pressure, like the pressure to just put food on the table will drive the hell out of you, and you'll figure it out. you will absolutely figure it out. So I know a lot of people are always on the border of, and I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow and just, don't have a plan, but if you feel like you're in that range and, you're going to have to sacrifice some stuff, like, you'll find a way to eat and prevent yourself from dying until you end up dying, and that'll drive you.
It's like the movie 127 Hours. Obviously, the guy didn't die, but he was there, just stuck, couldn't eat food or whatever, did everything he can, and he cut his arm off so that he could then go eat and drink so that he wouldn't die. Legend. Absolute legend.
Thanks for spinning that in a positive, Jack. We were going in a pretty dark place. Appreciate you bringing us back to life there, man.
It's all mindset, Sam. It's all mindset.
So we want to make sure you get to your girlfriend's in a reasonable hour so she stays a fan of the Elevation Nation podcast. We don't want her on our bad side. So we got 2 final questions for you, Jack, that we ask all of our guests around mental fortitude. So the first one we want to ask you is if you could give your about-to-graduate self any piece of advice, what would it be?
To myself? Oh, that's a great question. I would say simply be better at maintaining relationships and really just putting yourself out there. Like, I mean, to this day, we'll do content around Wrigleyville, and I got to walk up to someone and be like, hey, do you want to be in this video? And they say no. I'm like, that is so uncomfortable. But you do it 100 times, and eventually you're like, okay, it doesn't matter. You get rejected 40 times. Like, getting rejected, falling in love with rejection is, like, amazing. Failures are unbelievable. Like, I wish I failed more. Like, I genuinely wish I failed more, and I need to put myself in positions to fail more because you learn a shit ton and you get so much better. And it's not the success, it's the failures that are really what you're looking for, especially coming straight out of school. So I would encourage myself to not be afraid to fail.
And to add on to that point, I think it is all rooted in mental fortitude, right? I mean, it's if you know who you are, what you want, and how to get there, when you do fail, you have those things to fall back on, and that's what gets you over the hump. We've talked about mental fortitude a few times on this podcast. Sam and I believe that it's rooted in self-awareness, vision, and accountability. But Jack, that is our definition of mental fortitude, and we're curious, what does mental fortitude mean to you?
Mental fortitude, I think self-awareness is absolutely number one. That's the most important. That might be the most important trait in the world. And I know a lot of people don't have self-awareness when I play pickup basketball with them, and they think they're Steph Curry on the court. So that I've learned a lot of. But being self-aware is hyper important. Which then, being strong enough mentally to be self-aware, acknowledge your flaws, and figure out how do we deal with these. So it's not just the self-awareness, it's having kind of that humbleness and like not being cocky to where, okay, I can push that away, or, it's not actually, or making excuses for yourself. Well, I only did it because this. Like, no, you're this way. You need to figure that out. And actually go through with it. So it's kind of a 2-3 step process.
I couldn't agree more. Being rooted in self-awareness. Again, I go back to what we said earlier. Why the hell is no one teaching this in high school? What about college? Why not in the real world? I'm glad, Parker and I figured it out early enough, and Jack, you did too. It's like you need to be self-aware, and hopefully this conversation, I think, with you opening up in Elevation Nation, realizing the importance of self-awareness, people will take a step back and take some time to try to just figure out who they are. So I love that. Jack, man, I feel like I've known you forever at this point, dude. Like, I know we've only been talking for 45 minutes. I feel like we go way back. This was incredible. What a great conversation. I appreciate you opening up and being vulnerable. I think all your fans and followers are going to get to see a different side of you that they probably haven't seen before. We didn't talk much about sports, so we'll have to do that next time. But this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with us.
I appreciate it. This is really cool. I think what you guys are doing is really, really smart, and you guys are really good at listening, to what I'm saying and then conceptualizing and kind of forming your own opinions. I would encourage you guys, you have guests on all the time, and you've done this for a while now. To do one, just the two of you, I don't know if you guys have done a lot of that. I know you talk a ton, but just being able to hear yourself, be open, I think that helps, even if you do it once a year or once every 5, whatever. But I think that would be really cool. I'd love to hear you guys talk about all this stuff yourself.
Well, that's Fortitude and 15. Releases tomorrow, every
Amazing.
Thursday, everyone. But Jack, this was awesome. Honestly, we obviously grew up together. We were in different circles, but to come back so many years later with that big gap in the middle, not talking at all, whatever, and to see your success is amazing. But even more so to be able to talk about life and reflect and learn from each other. This was awesome, and I can't thank you enough for coming on.
You're in
This
New
was
York
amazing.
now, so you owe me a meetup.
Hey, man, beer, wine, steak. I know you're a steak guy. Any time of day. Seriously. You're just always, traveling, so you just got to make
Exactly.
sure it's during the week. But Sammy,
Elevation
with
Nation,
that,
until next week, peace. Yo, Jack, that was awesome.